Romper Room, where we ball a break. Big wins, big losses, all at stake. Party vibe, poker life, always crunk. Feel rich, feel broke, that's just the funk, yeah. Seen boys rise, seen boys fall. Bluffing stacks, risking it all. Got the queens, thought I locked the pot. Straight flush flip, now I'm feeling shot. It's the hustle, it's the grind, no time to assume. All in a full life in the Romper Room.
Welcome back, everybody, Poker Pals. Back from the weekend, ready for another Romper Room Poker Podcast.
Ready to go.
Hope you guys had a good one.
Absolutely.
I know I did. It was great. So much going on in the poker world right now, though.
It's really heating up.
It is. It is. Did you guys catch any of the action from the WSOP circuit event down at Choctaw Casino and Resort?
I did, yeah.
Man, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's been a really good series so far.
1,000 players.
Over 1,000, yeah.
Do you imagine the pressure?
That's a lot of pressure.
Especially for our local guys.
Yeah.
Arthur Morris and Eric Taylor.
For sure.
Both of them are still in the running.
Yeah, they're doing really well.
And doing incredibly well.
Absolutely.
Let's give a shout out to another local player.
Yeah.
Chase Pricker.
Absolutely.
He had a fantastic run.
Fantastic run.
And finished strong in 25th place.
That's incredible.
That's amazing, Chase.
Yeah.
We're proud of you. And good luck to Arthur and Eric.
Absolutely. Good luck to those guys.
Arthur's going for his second WSOP circuit ring. How awesome would that be?
That would be incredible.
Pretty sweet. All right, so let's jump into it, though.
Yeah.
Today, we're tackling a concept that can truly transform your game.
Yeah.
Pot odds.
Pot odds, one of the most important things you can know in poker.
I think everyone's felt that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
You're staring at a bet,
Right.
trying to figure out if it's worth calling,
Absolutely.
but you have no idea what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Pot odds give you a framework for making those tough decisions, even when you're feeling lost in the poker fog.
That's a good way to put it.
So let's break it down.
Yeah.
What exactly are pot odds, and how do they work in a real game?
Sure. So pot odds are basically the ratio of the amount of money in the pot compared to the amount of money that you have to call to continue in the hand.
Okay.
So if the pot has, let's say, $100 in it, and somebody bets $50, you're getting 3-to-1 pot odds.
Okay, 3-to-1 pot odds.
Because you have to call $50 to win $150.
Got it. So it's a ratio of 3-to-1?
I like that, weighing the reward against the risk.
Yeah, that's all it is.
So how do I actually calculate pot odds at the table?
Sure. So like I was saying, you look at the amount of money in the pot. Then you look at the amount of money that you have to call.
Got it.
And that is your pot odds. You're getting a ratio of the money in the pot to the money that you have to call.
Okay, I like it. So simple.
It's simple.
Easy to understand.
Yeah, it's a simple concept.
3-to-1 pot odds. That sounds kind of good. But how do I know if those odds are actually worth taking?
That's a good question.
Right.
So basically what you need to do is compare those pot odds to your chances of winning the hand.
Okay.
So if your chances of winning the hand are greater than the pot odds that you're getting, then it's a profitable call to make.
Makes sense.
But if your chances of winning are less than the pot odds, then it's not a profitable call.
Okay, that makes sense. Outs. Is this where things start to get complicated? No, outs are not complicated at all. So an out is basically a card that's going to help you make your hand.
Okay.
So let's say you have a flush draw.
Okay.
That means you have 4 cards of one suit.
Right.
And you need 1 more to make the flush.
Right.
So there are 9 cards left in the deck that can make you a flush.
Okay.
Those are your 9 outs.
Okay, 9 cards that can save the day.
Right.
But how do those 9 cards translate into actual odds? Like, what percentage chance do I have of hitting my flush? Is there some super secret poker formula I need to memorize?
No, there's a very easy way to figure it out.
Okay.
Basically, all you do is you multiply your outs by 4 if you're on the flop, or by 2 if you're on the turn.
Okay.
So in this case, we have 9 outs, and we're on the flop. We're going to multiply that by 4.
Okay.
That gives us a 36% chance of making our hand.
Okay, so I've got my pot odds, 3-to-1 in our example, and I've got my odds of winning the hand. About 36% with a flush draw.
Yeah.
Now, how do I use this information to make a smart decision?
So you're asking, how do you compare those 2 numbers?
Yeah.
Basically, 3-to-1 means that 1 out of every 4 times you have to win.
Got it.
To be profitable.
Okay.
So that's 25%.
Right.
So in this case, our chances of winning are 36%, and the pot odds are 25%.
Okay.
So that's a good call to make.
So in this case, calling the $50 bet would be a profitable move in the long run,
Yeah,
even if I don't win this particular hand.
exactly.
But here's the thing that always trips me up. In poker, we can't see our opponent's cards.
Right.
How can I calculate my odds of winning
Right.
if I don't even know what they have?
Well, that's where hand reading comes into play.
Okay.
You know, you have to kind of get a feel
Got it.
for what your opponent might have
Okay.
based on, their previous actions in the hand,
Okay.
what kind of player they are. Right.
And then you kind of put them on a range of hands.
So while we can never know for sure, we can make educated guesses about their hand range.
Exactly.
And that helps us get a more accurate picture of our own chances of winning.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about some common hand ranges and their associated odds.
Sure.
I know you mentioned flush draws. What are some other situations where knowing the odds can help me make quick decisions at the table?
Sure. So another very common situation is when you have an open-ended straight draw.
Okay.
So let's say that the board is, 6, 7, 8,
Okay.
and you have a 9 and a 10.
Got it.
So you need either a 5 or a jack
Right.
to make your straight.
Got it.
And there are 8 of those cards in the deck. So your odds are about 32% on the flop to make your hand.
Interesting. So an open-ended straight draw is slightly less likely to hit than a flush draw.
Right. Just slightly less.
What about other straight draws?
So another type of straight draw is an inside straight draw.
Right.
That's where you need one specific card
Okay.
to make your straight.
Okay.
So let's say the board is,
7, 8.
7, 8, 10.
Okay.
And you have a 9 jack.
Got it.
You need a 9
Got it.
to make your straight.
Right.
You only have 4 outs.
Okay.
So that's about 16%
Okay. Much lower.
on the flop.
Wow, that's a huge difference. So knowing those odds helps me avoid chasing those inside straights too often, especially when the pot odds aren't in my favor.
Exactly.
Okay, this is making so much sense. I'm already feeling more confident about my decision making,
That's great.
but I have a feeling there's even more to this story, right?
There is. There's a lot to pot odds.
We've talked about pot odds and outs,
Yeah.
but I've heard whispers of something called implied odds.
Implied
What are
odds.
those all about?
So implied odds are
Yeah.
basically when you think that you can win more money
Okay.
on a later streak.
Okay.
So if you flop a flush draw,
And you don't have the correct odds to call
Okay.
based on the money that's currently in the pot.
okay,
But you think that if you make your flush,
right,
that you can get, a lot of money
got
on
it.
the turn in the river,
Right.
then that would be a situation where you would use implied odds.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Culling with bad pot odds? That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It can be, yeah. It depends on the situation.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
Break this down for me.
Mm.
When would I ever want to call a bet when the pot odds aren't in my favor?
So, like I said, if you have a good draw, like a flush draw or a straight draw,
Okay,
and you think that
Yeah.
you can win a lot more money
okay,
once you make your hand,
got it.
that would be a situation where
Yeah.
you would consider implied odds.
Ah, I see. So even though the current pot odds aren't great,
Right.
the potential to win a much bigger pot down the road makes the call worthwhile. Okay, that's pretty mind-blowing. So implied odds are basically about factoring in those future bets
Yeah,
and how much more I could win if I hit my hand.
exactly.
Okay, but how can I be sure my opponent will actually pay me off if I hit my hand?
Well,
What if they get scared and fold?
that's a good question. So it really depends on your opponent and what
Yeah.
you think they have.
Okay.
So if you think that your opponent has, a hand that's good but beatable,
Right.
and they're the type of player that's gonna, pay you off when you make your hand,
Right.
then that's a situation where you can use implied odds.
So implied odds work best against those players who are likely to bet big even when they might be behind.
Right.
Are there ever situations where implied odds don't really matter?
Yeah, so implied odds aren't as important in situations like all-in situations
Okay.
because there's no more money to be won
Right.
once you're all in.
Right, because once all the chips are in the middle,
Mhm.
there are no future bets to consider. It's all or nothing.
Exactly. And they're also not as important in limit games because
Yeah.
there's a cap on the betting.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So understanding the nuances of implied odds and when they apply is essential for making optimal decisions at the poker table.
Exactly.
I'm feeling like I'm unlocking some serious poker secrets here.
I hope so.
This is getting intense. I love it. All right, so I think that covers implied odds.
Yeah.
So are we ready to
Yeah, I think so.
move on and talk about how we can use all this to improve our betting strategy?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. I'm ready to take my betting game to the next level.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so let's say you're in a hand.
Okay.
And you think your opponent has a draw.
Okay.
What you want to do is make it as expensive as possible for them to draw.
Got it.
So you're going to make a big bet,
Okay.
hoping that they'll fold.
Oh.
Or if they do call, at least you're getting a lot of money.
So it's about giving them the wrong price to call, right?
Right.
We touched on this earlier.
Exactly. You're trying to make sure that they're not getting the right pot odds to call.
Okay. But how do I know how much to bet to make sure they aren't getting the right pot odds?
Well, it depends on the situation.
Okay.
But basically, you want to bet an amount that makes it so that their percentage chance of winning is less than the pot odds.
But how big is big enough? How do I figure out the exact amount to bet to make them fold?
Sure. So let's look at an example.
Okay.
Let's say the pot is $100.
Okay.
And your opponent has a flush draw.
Okay.
And you think that they're going to call a bet of, let's say, $75.
Okay.
So if you bet $75,
Okay.
now the pot is $175, they have to call $75 to win $250.
Okay.
So their pot odds are a little bit worse than 2-to-1.
Okay. So their pot odds in that situation would be a little worse than 2-to-1.
Right.
Okay.
And their chances of making a flush are only about 36%.
Okay.
So they're not getting the right odds to call. They should fold in that situation.
This is brilliant. I'm starting to see how understanding pot odds can be just as important for betting as it is for calling.
Absolutely. It's just as important for betting.
Awesome. This is great. So on a wet board with lots of potential draws, I should be betting bigger to make my opponents pay a premium for chasing those cards.
What about when the board is more dry, meaning there are fewer potential draws out there?
On a dry board, you generally don't have to bet as much.
Okay.
Because your opponent is less likely to have a draw.
Got it. That makes sense. It's all about adapting my betting strategy based on the board texture and my opponent's tendencies. You know, it's amazing how deeply interconnected all these concepts are in poker's pot odds, outs, hand ranges, betting strategies. It's like a giant puzzle where every piece fits together.
It is, yeah. It's a complex game.
It really is. And the more you understand those connections, the better your overall game will become.
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, so we've covered how we can use all of this to improve our betting strategy.
Yeah.
Are there any other aspects
we haven't discussed?
We haven't really talked about how pot odds differ in different formats of poker.
Ooh, interesting. So what works in one format might not work in another?
Exactly, yeah. So like pot odds are used a little bit differently in tournaments than they are in cash games.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that a little bit. So let's start with tournaments.
Yeah.
How are pot odds used differently in tournaments?
So in tournaments, the blinds are constantly going up.
Right. If you just sit back and wait for premium hands, you'll bleed chips away as the blinds go up and up.
Right.
You need to be aggressive to survive.
Right. And so you sometimes need to take some risks with your pot odds.
Right.
You know, sometimes you're going to have to call a bet where you don't have the best of it.
Right.
But it's okay because you need to accumulate chips.
So in tournaments, it's more about building a stack, even if it means gambling a bit more. What about cash games? How do pot odds factor in there?
Cash games, the blinds stay the same. Right.
So you can be a little more patient. You don't have to take as many risks.
Right.
You know, you can wait for better spots.
So I can wait for those premium hands and really focus on making profitable decisions based on solid pot odds. It's more about long-term value and preserving my bankroll.
Exactly.
This is incredible. I'm starting to grasp the depth of this game.
Yeah.
It's not just about the cards. It's about the math, the psychology, and adapting to different situations. I bet there are even more nuances to pot odds that we haven't even touched on yet.
Oh, for sure.
This is great. I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
But hopefully this has given you a solid foundation to build upon.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely feeling more equipped to make smart decisions at the table. But before we wrap up, can you give our listeners some final words of wisdom about pot odds?
Sure. So the most important thing about pot odds is that you need to practice using them.
Okay.
You're not going to be able to, master them overnight.
It's going to take some time.
So what's the best way to practice using pot odds? Should I be whipping out my calculator at the poker table?
You can use a calculator, but you really want to try to, do the math in your head.
Okay, makes sense.
Get to a point where you can just estimate the pot odds pretty quickly.
Okay, so memorization is key. What else can I do to sharpen my pot odds skills?
You can also, watch other players,
Okay.
see how they're betting,
Okay.
and try to figure out
Yeah.
what kind of pot odds they're getting.
So it's all about observation
Mhm.
and building that poker intuition. Any specific tips for analyzing those betting patterns?
Yeah, just look for patterns in their betting.
Okay.
See if they bet big when they have a strong hand, or if they bet small when they're bluffing.
Got it.
Things like that.
That's fascinating. It's like becoming a poker detective, uncovering those subtle clues that reveal their strategy. Are there any resources out there that can help me practice these concepts?
There are a lot of good websites
Okay.
and books that
Yeah.
you can use to
Perfect.
practice pot odds.
Okay, so I've got my homework assignment.
Right.
Memorize those key odds, observe betting patterns like a hawk, and explore those poker strategy resources. Anything else I should keep in mind as I'm practicing?
Just be patient.
Okay,
It takes time.
got it.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
So embrace the learning process, even when it involves some tough beats along the way.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think we've given our listeners a fantastic overview of pot odds
Yeah, I think so.
and how they can impact their poker game.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely feeling more equipped to make smart decisions at the table. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for breaking down this complex concept in such a clear and engaging way.
My pleasure.
And to all our Romper Room Poker Podcast listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next week for another exciting poker strategy discussion. Until then, good luck at the tables, and may the pot odds be ever in your favor.